Doug Gottlieb Show, Fox Sports Radio. Aaron Nagler joins us. He's Cheesehead TV. He's the head of Cheesehead Nation. Aaron, what's your take on the Jordan Love pick?
Well, I mean, they got to be right, or they're all going to be out of a job, right? I mean, I'm for it, man. I'm for the idea of this really super talented kid getting to sit for at least 2 years, maybe even 3, considering where Rodgers' contract is. I was very surprised. There's no doubt about that, but I love the idea of it. Theoretically, it's a great idea. Of course, we all know we don't live in theory. We got to live in the real world. So I'm excited to watch it play out. There's no doubt.
You know, there's this thing, okay, in football. Darryl Royal famously said, when you pass, 3 things can happen and 2 of them are bad, right?
2 of them are bad.
Right? That's the old Darryl Royal, famous coach, University of Texas. The truth is that running the football, kind of same thing, right? You can fumble, or you can get tackled behind the line of scrimmage, or you can, gain positive yards. So the truth is, he's not wrong. I actually think in this particular instance, 3 things can happen, and 2 of them are good. Either Aaron Rodgers is still good in 3 years, and you pretend like, hey, Jordan Love's great, but we just don't need him, and you trade him. Right? Nobody will know if he can't play. I mean, maybe you go by preseason footage, but you don't know. The second thing here is Aaron Rodgers ages out and he retires or he moves on, and Jordan Love is the heir apparent and they're geniuses. The only way it could go bad is if that happens, Aaron Rodgers leaves, and then Jordan Love can't play dead, right? So in the football thing, 2 of 3 things can happen and they're good.
I mean, for the most part, I think that's true. I think the pushback, obviously, on, okay, you invested whatever you did draft capital-wise on Jordan Love, and then you turn around and trade him. I mean, I doubt you're going to get, unless he, completely balls out as Mr. August, whatever, in preseason, maybe you get a first-round pick for him. I mean, obviously, I don't think that's the plan. But you're right. It could transpire that way. I mean, my sense, though, both publicly and talking to people behind the scenes, it sure sounds like this is their guy. I mean, they are sold on his potential and or ability to step in and to basically, take the baton from Aaron Rodgers that he took from Brett Favre. Now, is that, you can argue about value. You can argue about the idea of having a rookie quarterback, which in today's NFL, when you have a rookie quarterback, that contract is something you should be able to take advantage of when you're building your roster. Clearly, they're not going to be able to do that for the first couple of years. Until Rodgers is out of the building. So, I mean, it's fraught with peril and pitfalls. But, again, if they can make the transition work, I think there's a ton of upside there.
All right. You died several slow deaths with every pick and no wide receivers. I guess, because I'm following you on Twitter, that, Brian Gutekunst is going to break your heart again here coming up, right? I guess my question is, doesn't it show? Don't they maybe think that that they have young wide receivers who can be secondary and tertiary threats? We all make it out to seem like drafting a young guy would fix it, but maybe they actually. I mean, they weren't the Eagles at the end of the year. They actually had their young guys, and their young guys. Valdez-Scantling, for example. Do they actually believe in those guys more so than they believe in a second or third round pick?
Yeah, I think there's no question about it when you look at how they operated during the draft. And I can only take Brian Gutekunst at his word when he says, they were looking actively to get up in the second round to maybe take someone, but they just didn't have the ammo after they traded away that 4th-round pick to jump up and get Love. And then you get to day 3, and as he said, there's just no one that they saw who was going to be able to come in and even make the team. Because I do think they are very much sold. Brian is particularly sold on the talent at that group, and I'm with you. I think, between fantasy football and Madden and whatever, people have such a dour outlook when it comes to the Packers wide receivers. And can they be inconsistent? Have they been frustrating at times? There's no question about it. But I also think they can really operate everything they want to do in LaFleur's system with the group that they have on hand. And they're very much counting on these guys developing. You look at Allen Lazard, where he was at this time last year. No one expected to see what they saw down the stretch as far as his, reliability. I mean, Aaron Rodgers picks up 3 huge first downs going to Lazard in that Monday night game against the Vikings, which won the division for them. It's things like that where you see the maturation. That is their philosophy: draft and develop, and they're not going to waver from it.
A.J. Dillon's a big kind of pounding back, and then, their top 2 running backs. Obviously, Aaron Jones had a great year. breakout year. Then you got Jamal Williams. They're both up at the end of the season. I know people would have preferred that they went wide receiver earlier, but how does A.J. Dillon fit in with how you think they want to play?
Yeah, and I think, you go back to the combine, Matt LaFleur mentioned wanting a third guy in that rotation. And I think Dillon absolutely fits that bill. You mentioned he's a big guy. He's the thunder to Aaron Jones's lightning. I know, as you mentioned, both guys that are already there, Williams and Jones, their contracts are both up at the end of the year. My hunch, and this is just guesswork on my part, my hunch is they get some kind of deal done with Aaron Jones. I don't think they're going to break the bank for the guy, but I think they get something from him extension-wise, and they allow Williams to walk. Now, that's probably what they're hoping, but selecting Dillon kind of protects you from both guys leaving. That's a guy who you're going to give a year, splitting carries, what have you, and then if things work out the way they want them to and they expect them to, you just hand him the rock the next year, his second year, and you let him run with it. Because I do think, you get in those games where you talk about thunder and lightning, you let Aaron Jones just go ham in the first half, you get a lead, especially in those November, December games. You bring in Dillon in the second half and you just start trucking over tired defenses. I love this idea. I love this plan. Now, obviously, again, this is all theoretical, and it's great to have plans, but he's got to be effective, and he absolutely has to hit the ground running when he gets to Green Bay.
Hi, Aaron Nagler joining us on the Doug Gottlieb Show. He's the president of Cheesehead Nation, and Cheesehead TV is, of course, where you can see all of his daily work, sometimes hourly work, as he loves the Pack, goes to the Pack games, updates us on everything Pack. There is this other kind of side theory that I have, and David Bakhtiari kind of alluded to it, which is a ticked-off Aaron Rodgers can be a really good Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, there's this thing. His whole career, he's been pissed at somebody. Whether it's the teams that didn't recruit him when he went to junior colleges, or when he came out of junior college and he went to Cal, or it's the Niners, who passed on him and took Alex Smith, or it's Brett Favre who didn't treat him well. Like, that's kind of been his thing. Does this motivate Favre? Does this motivate A-Rod in a way in which they're actually not? You know what? He's mad. Okay, he plays better when he's mad.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I don't think that's why the pick was made. Let's motivate our two-time MVP quarterback. But I do think it's a byproduct of it, and I do think it's going to be a good thing. As you mentioned, I mean, you go back to, I think it was 2011, he did an interview where he mentioned a college professor who early on in his time at school had said, why are you pursuing football? This is such a waste of your time. You're never going to make the NFL. And he mentions this so many years later. He categorizes and kind of recalls everything, every possible slight. And I'm not going to sit here and say he has gotten complacent or whatever, or lost that fire, or doesn't have that chip on his shoulder until this selection. But it's certainly, if he's looking for motivational fuel, he's got that Michael Jordan in him. You're watching Last Dance now these last 2 weeks. Michael Jordan remembered everybody who ever slighted him about anything. That is very much Aaron Rodgers, and certainly this fits into that.
What is what's going to be the most interesting part outside of Rodgers with the Packers, right? It was a bad matchup with the Niners, and people are making them out. You add a player here. Look, they're just not built to play against the San Francisco 49ers. They got their asses kicked twice. But what is the most interesting thing about this team and the adjustments they've made with the personnel heading into the new season?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the number one thing you're going to be watching for is the run defense, or lack thereof, and the issues they had last year, which, I mean, if you look at the personnel moves from this offseason, they haven't really addressed. I mean, obviously, they let Blake Martinez walk. They drafted a new kid. They brought in Kirksey from Cleveland to play linebacker. But up front, they're almost identical. They're pretty much identical. And I really expected them to kind of adjust there, and they haven't. In fact, it's kind of crazy. This past draft weekend, it's the first draft the Packers haven't selected a defensive end since 1985. That's a long time. That's many years in a row taking defensive linemen. Maybe they have a Snacks Harrison signing in their future. I don't know what their plan is there, but to me, you talk about that's a bad matchup with the 49ers. They had trouble with the run against pretty much everyone. They had a small stretch where they seemed to have figured it out there during the year, but I mean, you remember that Favre's Packers had trouble with the Cowboys for years. I just hope this isn't a case of, the 49ers are the team you can't get past no matter what.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't want to ever overreact to one team, but it's certainly setting up that way.
Yeah, it's fascinating, though, how they're built, right? With the Smith boys, it feels like they were built almost like the old Indianapolis Colts, right? We'll get a lead, we'll get a lead, and then we have, we're gonna try and get after the passer because you're gonna forget about running.
Pin our ears back, and the 49ers took advantage of that. They knew that's their MO. They get those ends rushing up the field. Okay, we'll run trap, and we'll run sweep, and we'll take care of all that. They just took advantage of it, and you have to think Mike Pettin has to do some adjusting because teams are going to have been watching that tape all offseason for what the tendencies were and how they took advantage of it, because teams are going to do that again and again and again until the Packers show they can stop it.
You mentioned that they're kind of running it back, right? It's kind of a lot of similarities, kind of the same roster a little bit, right? Obviously, you're adding DeGuara, who potential to be there, that second tight end, a pass catching tight end who they drafted, and Dillon probably a third running back. One thing that's going to be fascinating, no OTAs. We don't know about camp. You could look at it as, hey, there's a possibility that because they have so much retention that they'll be ahead of other teams early.
Absolutely. The idea of continuity, especially on offense, is a very good thing. It's where teams in the NFL tend to, not always, but tend to, stay kind of elite, for lack of a better word, from year to year. Defense can be very up and down, but if you have continuity, both coaching, scheme, players, etc., you have a chance from year to year. And then this year in particular, because of what you just mentioned, the fact that who knows when they're going to be on a football field together. These guys are doing their virtual meetings and what have you, but there's only so much you can do before you have to get on a football field. You have to start practicing and working together. And if that time is truncated, which you got to think it will be at least somewhat, I think the teams that are the most similar on offense are going to have a slight advantage. It's not a huge thing, but it's a slight thing.
Aaron, let's get back. Let's not bury the lead. Bob McGinn, who is a former columnist, or he's a columnist now with the Athletic, he thinks LaFleur was behind the decision to gain leverage over his quarterback. Do you agree?
I mean, I think they definitely want to move a certain way as far as how LaFleur wants to play on offense, right? Where I had an issue with that column was Bob writing point blank, my sense is that Matt wants to do this. Well, Bob doesn't go to 1265 Lombardi anymore. I don't think Bob has ever met Matt LaFleur. So how does he have a sense of what Matt wants to do? To me, was pretty curious. But I don't think there's any question. All you had to do was look at Matt LaFleur, the live shot we got of him on draft night, to know that he was pretty excited about Jordan Love. I don't think there's any doubt there. But, it's in concert with Brian Gutekunst. To paint it as some power move by Matt LaFleur, I think is short-sighted.
Yeah, I mean, he's been on the job 11 months or 12 months or whatever, to think that a guy they got badly out-coached there by the Niners in the NFC Championship game, to think he had the power to walk in and say, hey, let's do an FU to Aaron Rodgers, who has an untradeable, unsittable contract for 2 years.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I do think Matt has a say in this. There's no question about it. This is how I want to play. This is the kind of guy I want.
Yes.
But, that's Brian's call. 100%.
Yes, and I honestly think that this is a great challenge for Aaron, because of he was in the same situation, and everybody remembers it wasn't great with him and Favre for a long time. And this is a challenge. Like, all right, you had a problem with it? Let's see if you're a big boy. If you can put on your big boy pants and be a leader and teach this. Especially a kid that comes from this background, right? Dad's a cop, and he kills himself like Jordan Love. This is a kid that he needs everybody to wrap their arms around. And he's not playing this for next year. He's not close, but he's got some talent, and we'll see how Aaron Rodgers how he develops him. This is going to be a super interesting season to get ready for. Thanks so much for joining us, Aaron. I love your work. I follow it. I watch it, and I can't get enough of it. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Doug. Thanks for having me on.